Vikings have won the toss. Andre Ismail averaging 19 per return. Vikings last in the NFL in kick return average. Kevin Butler gets things started in Minnesota. It is Ismail from the 8-yard line. And he is upended by the combination of Kwame Lassiter and Devon McDonald. So Brad Johnson will lead the Vikings out, his 5th start of the year. Johnson starting his 3rd consecutive game in relief of Warren Moon, still suffering from the ankle injuries. The men protecting Johnson, both McDaniel and Dixon, Arizona State University products. Leroy Horde, 100 yards 2 weeks ago, along with Evans. The combination of Reed and Carter among the best in the NFL, and the tight end is Hunter Goodwin. 1st and 10 for the Vikings. Johnson to the air on 1st down with time. Over the top to the running back, Leroy Horde, playing his 3rd game with Minnesota, and a gain of 7 yards on 1st down. The Arizona Cardinals defense ranked number 18, but moving up the charts. The front 4, the rookie Simeon Rice out of Illinois, along with Wilson, Pro Bowler Eric Swan, and Michael Bankston. The linebacking core, Miller, Eric Hill in the middle, and Seth Joyner, Bradford, Alexander Bennett, and Williams. Bennett making his 1st start for the injured Matt Darby. Leroy Horde picks up the 1st down for the Vikings.
One of the things the Minnesota Vikings want to do with their run game today is run a 2 tight end personnel group with an I-back formation. That means Greg DeLong right here sets up as a fullback, and he can lead block for Leroy Horde, or he can sneak down here and get out into a pass pattern for Brad Johnson.
After the 7-yard pickup by Horde, 1st and 10, the fullback Charles Evans in motion. And once again, it is Leroy Horde to the outside. Began the season in Baltimore, then went to Carolina, now playing with his 3rd team of 1996.
Kenny, the Vikings have gone back and forth all season trying to decide whether they want to be a running team or a passing team. And recently, with the injury to Robert Smith and the ultimate failure of their run game, Brian Billick and Dennis Green have gotten together and said, all right, even though we don't have Smith, we're going to go out in the free agent market, we're going to pick up Leroy Horde, and we've got to run the football if we're going to win with a young quarterback in Brad Johnson.
Here's Johnson on 2nd and 5. 4th offensive play, and all have involved Leroy Horde down the sideline, finally forced out at the Cardinals' 26-yard line, a gain of 37 yards on the pass from Johnson to Horde.
And when you have a young quarterback and you're running the ball well, it sets up not only the passing game, but the short passing game. Because Johnson looks downfield, he sees his receivers covered. This is always an easy throw right here. And then watch this block here by Jake Reed. That block by Jake Reed enables Leroy Horde to pick up an extra 20 yards.
37-yard gain. Horde takes a rest. 1st down on the Cardinals' 26. Johnson chased by Simeon Rice, throwing end zone. The intended receiver was the tight end, Greg DeLong.
And Simeon Rice is one of the 2 focal points for the Minnesota offense in their protection of Brad Johnson today. What they want to do is they want to match up Todd Stussy on Simeon Rice, and they want to give Stussy help with a running back to chip on Simeon Rice. And then the other focal point, certainly, is Eric Swan, right in the middle of the defensive formation. They need to get 2 linemen on Swan.
2nd down and 10. The handoff goes to Amp Lee. Looks to cut it outside and is forced back. So it will be 3rd and long for the Vikings.
Although they ran the ball on that play, I think part of the reason why that play wasn't as successful a running play is they ran right at Eric Swan. So Dennis Green wanting to show the diversity of this offense. And Brian Billick wants the Arizona offense to think, all right, there's nothing that we won't do. We'll throw the long ball, we'll throw the short ball, we'll run outside, and we'll even run inside of Eric Swan. That's going to keep Vince Tobin and the Arizona Cardinals guessing.
And right now, 3rd down and 7. Andrew Jordan, the tight end, in motion. Johnson dumps it off. This is Amp Lee, but he is caught for a loss by Seth Joyner. Loss of 5 yards, and that will send out the Vikings field goal unit.
A lot of people are saying that Seth Joyner is having his best season as a pro since he was an all-pro with the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, what you're going to see is he reads this screen, and the object of the linebacker, once he reads the screen, is to split the blocking, to go between the 2 offensive linemen who are out there to block for the screen pass. He splits it, makes a tackle. It doesn't get any better.
45-yard attempt. Scott Sisson. It is wide left. Sisson's season best was 44. He misses from 45. Cardinals to the offense when we return to the Metrodome. A look at downtown Minneapolis. We're inside the Metrodome. 1st and 10 for the Arizona Cardinals on their own 35-yard line. Play action. Esiason hits Frank Sanders for the first down across the 45-yard line. A gain of 11. Dwayne Washington made the tackle. Boomer Esiason, the NFC Offensive Player of the Month for November with 8 touchdowns, over 1,100 yards over the last 3 games. Brown, Selby, Devlin returning after missing 2, Redmond and Wolf, LaShawn Johnson, Larry Centers in the backfield, Sanders and Moore. And they fake the end around. Instead, it's LaShawn Johnson took the handoff and then faked the handoff to Frank Sanders, and a pickup of 2 for LaShawn Johnson. The Vikings defense ranked 15th in the National Football League. Harrison with the All-Pro Randall, Fisk, and Fernando Smith. Dave Garnett, 3rd-year man out of Stanford, for the injured Dixon Edwards. Washington and Fuller on the corners with Thomas and Griffin. The pitch back to LaShawn Johnson, upended after a short gain.
And you notice that the Arizona Cardinals are going on a quick count. That's what Boomer Esiason does, not only to keep the defense on their heels, but to keep the defense from disguising the coverages. Because if you come right up to the line and snap the ball, the defensive backs know that they must align immediately on their coverage responsibilities.
3rd down and 7. Esiason out of the shotgun. 3 wide receivers. Quick drop, and the pass intended for Marcus Dowdell, who caught the game-winning touchdown last week against the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Cardinals will be forced to punt.
Well, that was nice coverage on that play by Orlando Thomas. And one thing about Orlando Thomas, he's a guy who always thinks about intercepting the ball. That's all he talks about.
And Jeff Fiegels will punt it away. David Palmer inactive for the 3rd straight week, so Amp Lee is back deep for the Vikings. And he takes off from the 15-yard line across the 20. 36-yard punt, 7 yards on the return. Anthony Edwards made the stop. Another opportunity for the Vikings offense when we come back. Back in Minnesota, no score. Both the Cardinals and the Vikings 6-6. Minnesota playing against an NFC opponent for the first time in 5 weeks. Their last 4 games against teams from the AFC West. They defeated Oakland and lost to the Chiefs, the Seahawks, and the Broncos. On 1st down, it is Leroy Hoare, the workhorse, in his 1st quarter for the Vikings, a gain of 5 yards.
One thing you'll notice about Leroy Hoare is the fact that if no one gets on his feet in the backfield, which is what happened last week against Denver, he will almost always pick up positive yards because he's a big body guy and he's a power runner. The thing that the Arizona Cardinals want to do is they want to attack his body. Hoare runs high. They want to punish him early so that he wears down later in the game.
2nd down and 5. Hoare's 4th carry. And he is close to the 1st down. And 4 carries, 22 yards for Leroy Hoare.
And there it is, more positive yardage. Of course, Kenny, we put a book together on Leroy Hoare, like to write books, like to read books. Had to put one together on this man. He was humbled this season. After being an all-pro 2 years ago on a multi-million-dollar contract, he's now a journeyman who lives in a hotel. He's so transient, he doesn't even bother renting an apartment, and he's quiet on Sundays. He's a talkative guy during the week. and his teammates are always surprised at how quiet he is on Sunday. He says he does not like to make the defenders mad.
Well, the Cardinals defenders very happy right here as Simeon Rice takes down Brad Johnson for a loss of 7, and that is sack number 9. 9.5 sacks for the rookie out of Illinois.
And it looks like Corey Stringer got a little shaken up. Let's take a look at what Simeon Rice does. Now, he's an outside pass rusher. So you've got Todd Stussy on Simeon Rice, and we talked about it earlier, how they want to chip Simeon Rice and give Stussy help. When they don't chip him, they don't help. Simeon Rice beats Stussy clean and comes up with a very nice sack. Minnesota's going to have to go back to the drawing board on the sideline and get a running back on Simeon Rice.
Johnson from the shotgun. Draw play at Lee on 2nd down and 17. Gain 7 back to the original line of scrimmage.
And of course, the draw play or a screen play are the other ways that you slow down a violent pass rush. Because what happens is when you start running draws and you start running screens, you infiltrate the mind of a defensive lineman and you create a slight amount of hesitation in his pass rush. When you do that, you give your offensive lineman a much better chance.
3 wide receivers for the Vikings. Johnson airs it out, and he overthrows Qadry Ismail. Tito Paul on the coverage.
The difference for Tito Paul in this game is his coverage is on Qadry Ismail. Last year, his coverage was on Chris Carter, and Tito Paul was absolutely lit up. Chris Carter scoring 2 touchdowns and 12 receptions. Today, it's going to be a little easier for Tito to cover Qadry.
First punt of the afternoon for Mitch Berger. Good hang time. Anthony Edwards back deep. And a short return by Edwards out to the 27-yard line. 49-yard punt by Berger. Boomer Esiason and the Cardinals. With an option for the Cardinals, then sent to the bench. Kent Graham started the middle 6. And there is Kent Graham, who is the second-string quarterback here today, coming back from that sprained left knee. And Boomer, of course, over the last 3 games, 3-0, 8 touchdown passes. Frank Sanders in motion. Esiason on 1st down with the quick slant. It is Sanders who makes the catch. And right now for a McDonald's game break, let's return to James Brown at our Fox Television Center.
Hey, Kenny, Dave Brown trying to capitalize on a Ty Detmer fumble, but guess what? He throws the pick, his 16th of the season. That leads to an Eagle field goal. Philadelphia on top, 3-0 in the first. Back to Kenny Albert and Tim Green.
Well, Kenny and JB, I think Howie Long called Dave Brown a coach killer in the pregame show, and it looks like that may be the thing.
And of course, we had a look at the James Brown interview with the coach of the Giants, Dan Reeves. Arizona with victories over 3 divisional opponents in the last 3 weeks, and they averaged 35 points per game in defeating the Redskins, the Giants, and the Eagles.
And even though Arizona is way down here on the list, they still do have certainly a realistic shot at the playoffs, and that's what Vince Tobin, the head coach of the Cardinals, has been saying from the beginning of this season.
3rd down and 6. Esiason out of the shotgun with time, and it is picked off. Corey Fuller, the left cornerback, coming up with his 3rd interception of the season.
But the guy who makes this play is the young rookie linebacker, Kenny. Ben Hanks, number 51. He's got the coverage on Larry Centers, and he knows right here, right there, that Centers is the favorite target of Boomer Esiason. Boomer throws that ball behind Centers, and then Corey Fuller, in the tradition of this Vikings defense and the Vikings secondary, are always looking for the ball, always looking for a tip ball. That's something they learned from Tony Dungy years ago, and it's carried over with the defensive coordinator, Coach Fazio.
On 1st down, the handoff goes to the fullback, Charles Evans. Dennis Green told us yesterday, Tim, we need to get Boomer Esiason out of that zone early. And the Vikings come up with the interception midway through the 1st quarter.
Yeah, and they wanted to do it by putting immediate pressure on Boomer Esiason. so far the Arizona offensive line has done a pretty decent job of containing John Randall and picking up the pressure on the Vikings blitzes.
Second down and 4. Amp Lee. Not enough for the first down.
Well, certainly the Minnesota Vikings are establishing the run, and that's exactly what they wanted to do coming into this game. Because what happens is, once you can run the football, it opens up the passing game. Because what you do is, Brian Billick, the offensive coordinator, will force the Arizona defense to commit their safeties to the run game. Once they commit the safeties to the run game, it isolates the cornerbacks and it opens up the passing game.
On 3rd and 1, Horde leaps over the top for the Vikings first down.
And when you're a journeyman, that's what you do. I mean, you go from the superstar status to all of a sudden being cut by your team and then move to Carolina for a week and then cut. And this is kind of effort you get. It's early in the game, but they want to get this first down, and Horde just absolutely gives up his body to get it. It's not like he's going over the pile for a touchdown here. This is for a first down, but Leroy Horde opens himself up to injury because he knows how fleeting an NFL career can be.
Horde with 69 combined yards, adding to that total. Leroy Horde, who spent his first 6 years in Cleveland, has moved around, and if he continues to play this well, Tim, he may be able to move out of that hotel.
I think he's going to have to not only get an apartment, he might have to get himself a nice big old house. He ran right out of his shoe on this play. Now, the key is the blocking on the outside. Look at the nice hole the Minnesota offensive line gives Leroy Horde. And then all that enables Jameer Miller to do, the linebacker on the ground right there, is get an arm on Leroy Horde. Horde is too big, too strong, too powerful to tackle with just an arm. I mean, he's powerful enough to run right out of his shoe.
Across the 20-yard line, Scotty Graham. So not only have the Vikings established the run, they've done it with 4 different ball carriers.
But really, Leroy Horde's the guy. I mean, he's the guy who's the mainstay of this Minnesota offense right now. And as I said before, Kenny, what will happen is if they continue to have success with Leroy Horde, it's going to open up the big plays to Jake Reed, Chris Carter, and Kadri Ismail.
Second down and 9. Johnson rolling right. And Amp Lee, the intended receiver. Coverage on the play by Seth Joyner.
And you know who else had coverage on that play? Was Eric Swan. And that is an amazing thing. Because whenever you've got a guy who's as big as Eric Swan and as dominant in the interior line, it's a very rare thing for him to have the athletic ability to be right out there and get coverage on a running back. But that's exactly what Swan does, and he forces Brad Johnson to throw that ball a little further outside than he would like. Amazing to see a guy that big also be that quick.
3rd down and 9. Johnson, and he overthrows Jake Reed, who leaped, could not make the catch. And once again, it was Tito Paul, who you spoke about earlier, who last year was matched up and really killed throughout the game by Carter, but Paul today matched up with Reed.
Well, and Jake Reed is a big-bodied wide receiver. The thing that he does not like to play against are the smaller, quicker cornerbacks, and that's what Tito Paul is. He's a smaller, quicker guy. So it's great game planning by the Arizona Cardinals to put the small, quick guy on Jake Reed and the big star, Aeneas Williams, on Chris Carter.
38-yard attempt, and this time Sisson nails it. He missed earlier from 45. Scott Sisson gives the Minnesota Vikings a 3-0 lead. Kenny Albert, Tim Green in Minnesota. Vikings and the Cardinals both with records of 6-6. And the Vikings out on top by the score of 3-0. That is Tommy Bennett back deep along with Leland McElroy for the Cardinals. McElroy decides to stay right there, so the Cardinals will start out from their own 20-yard line. Tim, tonight, your favorites, Mulder and Scully, uncover our nation's most terrifying conspiracy. But exposing the truth could cost them their lives. An all-new X-Files tonight at 9, 8 Central on Fox.
I know it's not going to cost them their lives because this show is going to continue on not only this season but in many seasons to come. So I know Mulder and Scully are going to make it through.
But it could cost them their lives.
Yeah, I guess it could. I just don't think it will.
First reception of the game for Larry Centers, and a Cardinals first down. Centers leads all NFL running backs with 73 receptions this season.
Well, we talked earlier about how to play a screen if you're a linebacker. And I want you to watch how the Minnesota linebacker plays a screen. Dave Garnett. Remember what Seth Joyner did? He came up and split the blockers and made the tackle. Well, this time, the linebacker doesn't split the blockers. He doesn't make the tackle. And Larry Centers is able to pick up a first down.
12 yards on the play. LaShawn Johnson out across the 35-yard line. Picks up 3, so it will be 2nd down and 7.
Coming into this game, the Arizona Cardinals wanted to establish the passing game to set up the run. Now, that is a very rare thing, but when you've got a quarterback who's as hot as Boomer Esiason and you're the coordinator, Jim Fossil, what you do is you say, hey, let's just keep going. Let's do what we do best, and that's the passing game, trying to open up the run.
And this is LaShawn Johnson to the outside. Stiff arms Dwayne Washington, and is forced out after the gain of 3.
And a lot of people are wondering, well, what's going on with LaShawn Johnson? Because if you look at his first 2 games, you see that he had an average of 9.4 yards per carry. He had 2 touchdowns in 2 games. And then over the last 9 games, his average has dropped to 3.0 with only 1 touchdown in those 9 games. Today, he's had 4 carries and only picked up 10 yards. So it's looking like he's still in that slide.
3rd down and 3. Esiason's pass deflected. The intended receiver was Anthony Edwards. Alfred Jackson got a piece of it.
And when Boomer Esiason is throwing the ball to Anthony Edwards, what it tells you is, it tells you there was great coverage all over the field, because of course when he drops back, the first guy he wants to look to is Rob Moore, and then Frank Sanders, and then Marcus Dowdell, and then Anthony Edwards. So it tells you there was coverage all the way along the line.
Amp Lee forced back to the 13. Not much running room following the 49-yard punt, 7 yards on the return. Trey Junkin on the stop. Well, it's in the NFC playoff picture in Week 14. And here we take a special look through our Fox computer, the division leaders.
Fox file, and then you see the division leaders, of course, up here, Green Bay, San Francisco, and Dallas, although Dallas just precariously placed on top of that division with Washington and Philadelphia right here. They and Carolina control their destiny. And then you see both of these teams here, Arizona and Minnesota, in the back of the pack, but still with a very realistic playoff hope.
Both need help from others, but they could certainly help themselves with a victory here today. A 9-yard gain on the pass play from Johnson to Jake Reed. And that is the first reception by a wide receiver.
And Dennis Green told us yesterday that if the Minnesota Vikings are going to run the table in December and win all 4 of their games, guaranteeing a spot in the playoffs, Jake Reed is going to have to emerge as a dominant player. He has the physical tools. Now he has to play with the sense of urgency that Chris Carter plays with, and that Leroy Hoard's been playing with. I mean, Hoard is a guy who's playing with a sense of urgency today.
And that will do it for the first quarter. 7 carries, 42 yards for Leroy Hoard. And he also caught 2 passes. Big first quarter for Hoard as the Vikings lead by the score of 3-0. Inside the Metrodome, 1 quarter complete. Minnesota Vikings lead the Arizona Cardinals by the score of 3-0. Kenny Albert with Tim Green. And it was all Leroy Hoard in the first quarter for the Vikings.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, he's had 42 yards on the ground, 44 yards in the air. Leroy Hoard is playing with a sense of urgency. The Vikings also need that same urgency now out of Jake Reed. They always get it out of Chris Carter. And if Hoard keeps running the ball as effectively as he has, you're going to see the passing game open up as well for the Minnesota Vikings.
2nd down and 6. Johnson bobbled the snap from the center, Jeff Christie, a former Cardinal.
Well, whether or not Arizona gets this ball or if the Vikings get this ball, the amazing thing is, again, the quickness of Eric Swan to just get in there and get on that ball almost faster than Brad Johnson. It looks like Brad Johnson did come up with it, but Swan's quickness is amazing. Now, we saw him covering earlier. We saw him covering a running back out of the backfield. Look at this quickness right through the line there, and he gets his hands on it. That's one where he's really he's got to be able to win that hand battle with a quarterback, Brad Johnson.
Loss of 2, 3rd down and 8. Johnson swings it out. Ampli, the 3rd down specialist, but not enough for the 1st down. Aeneas Williams made the stop.
And that's what Aeneas Williams does. I mean, he is an all-pro defensive back because he can do it all. I mean, he can cover, and then when there's a running play or there's a short pass, he also has the capacity to come up and make the sure tackle, stopping Ampli absolutely in his tracks, stopping him short of the 1st down.
Mitch Berger. And a flag is thrown. Our first flag of the game, a penalty-free first quarter. Another flag. So 2 flags on the punt.
Yep. But this one's going to come back because of the encroachment of the Arizona Cardinals. You know, penalties have been something that the Minnesota Vikings struggled with early on in the season, but over the past couple of games, their lack of penalties is what they've felt has really kept them in the game. Of course, beating the Oakland Raiders 2 weeks ago, and then having a very legitimate shot to beat the Denver Broncos, the team with the best record in football last week. And Dennis Green felt a lot of that was due to the fact that his club reduced the penalties dramatically.
4 penalties 2 weeks ago, only 2 last week against Denver. Our referee today, in his 16th National Football League season, is Johnny Greer.
Offsides. Number 55 on the defense. Number 42. Then an illegal use of the hands.
You're a lip reader, Tim.
Well, I mean, the ref's mic's off, so we might as well go with it, right, Ken?
You sound a lot like Johnny.
Yeah. Johnny never liked. I played for the Falcons for 8 years, and Johnny never liked us. Whenever we played in Atlanta, we knew that the calls were going to go against us. And now Vince Tobin's wondering if Johnny's taking that same.
Accepted. We'll penalize 5 yards.
That same animus that placed it from the Falcons to the Cardinals. But
now the microphone works.
Yeah, now it works. But that was an obvious penalty and a good call by the official.
So a second life for the Vikings.
Yeah, and that's the last thing Arizona needed. Look how successful they've been at moving the ball thus far in the game.
Johnson fakes 2 handoffs, looking downfield, can't find anybody, now dumps it off. And the tight end Andrew Jordan rolls out of bounds after the 5-yard gain. Taken down by Seth Joyner. He was about the 5th option on that play.
And Brad Johnson really had time to, spread out a blanket and have a picnic back there. And it's because his offensive line is doing an outstanding job, and it starts with Eric Swan. And watch the job Dave Dixon is doing on Swan. Now, Dixon's a big body guy. He's 6'6", but he's about 360 pounds before breakfast. So that's giving Swan a big load to try to move back into Brad Johnson's face.
Greg DeLong, the tight end, lined up as the fullback as Horde loses a couple. And right now, for a McDonald's game break, let's go to JV in our Fox Television Center.
And the Giants still hoping for a playoff spot, but not this way, as Ty Detmer on the play action finds tight end Jason Dunn. It's Philly on top of the Giants in the second by 10. Back to Minnesota. Kenny and Tim.
So the Philadelphia Eagles, who were upset by the Arizona Cardinals last week in a wild finish.
Yeah, and a great stat by the Blonde Bomber to say that Philly always had that great record against teams with losing records. And of course, the Giants are one of those losing record teams.
Wide open, Charles Evans. And he has it up for the 1st down as Tommy Bennett tried to pull him down, a gain of 8.
And Kenny, that's what we talked about before. Remember Aeneas Williams making the tackle and stopping the 1st down? Well, now this time, Charles Evans has got Tommy Bennett coming to tackle him. So where Aeneas Williams makes this tackle and stops it for the 1st down, watch Tommy Bennett. he just gets blasted over on his back, and Evans picks up that first down. That's the difference between being an all-pro and a young defensive back in the National Football League.
Another quick handoff to the fullback, Charles Evans. Bernard Wilson made the stop.
And that's really a nice change-up play that Brian Billick uses with his offensive scheme. That quick handoff to Charles Evans. They run the quick trap on the inside. And so you're thinking Horde, here comes Horde, here comes Evans as the blocker. And what you do is you send Horde one way to get the linebackers thinking Leroy Horde, and then you just slip the ball quick to Evans.
Second down and 8. This time it is Horde. Leroy Horde for another Vikings first down.
That's a pretty thing. I mean, that's pretty. To see a guy run the football like that and run through the line of scrimmage. Now, they give him the hole. They give him the initial hole on the line of scrimmage. So you see the nice blocking there by Dixon, the nice blocking by the tight end and Stringer. But now look at it. I mean, look at Horde work. He's just churning and working, and he picks up that first down on his own. Now, his offensive line gets him the first 3, but he gets the last 7 on his own.
Leroy, pay the incidental bill, check out of the hotel.
And this is what happens. I mean, you have that kind of imbalance in time of possession when you can run the football.
Aeneas Williams came together with Chris Carter, and Brad Johnson very upset about the lack of a flag.
Well, Brad Johnson told us yesterday, he said, you know, the only way I'm going to throw the ball at Aeneas Williams is if the wide receiver has him clearly beat. So this tells you that Brad Johnson looks at this setup right here and he says, all right, Chris Carter has got Aeneas Williams clearly beat, which he doesn't. Aeneas Williams has the good coverage, and that's why, more than anything, Brad Johnson threw that ball long. Whenever Aeneas Williams is in the area, your wide receiver either has to be clearly open or you have to throw the ball long to get your wide receiver to run under it.
Deep drop, and F. Lee makes the catch and has it up for the first down and more. Finally tripped up, steps out. So for Amp Lee, his 3rd reception, and this one goes for 21 yards.
And this is the perfect play selection for a blitz. And that's what Arizona does on this. Now watch, you're going to see these guys up here. They're coming on the blitz. So the offensive line stifles them, then they turn them loose, and now there's nobody out here except Simeon Rice. Randall McDaniel gets enough of a block on him to spring Amp Lee. Now, Randall McDaniel is a guy who blocks and does an outstanding job of blocking people in space. He blocks linebackers and safeties better than any guard in the National Football League.
Leroy Horde down to the 12-yard line as the Vikings offense continues to move the football with Brad Johnson at the helm. And there is Warren Moon, the 2nd string today for the Vikings with the ankle sprain, and Dennis Green told us the problem with Warren is his balance.
And Dennis also told us, and I thought this was very interesting yesterday, that Warren Moon, he would fully expect Warren Moon to return this season and return to his starting role at the head of this Vikings offense.
And he said if Johnson were to get hurt today, Warren Moon would be the guy.
Right, he's not 100%, but Dennis does expect Warren back.
Charles Evans to the 10, so it will be 3rd and about 7. The Vikings can pick up a first down without reaching the end zone.
Kenny, the thing that Warren Moon gives you that Brad Johnson doesn't quite give you yet is that little extra magic. And, you know, we talked about how Boomer Esiason is in the zone. Warren Moon has been around this league so long, and he's been so successful that he has the capacity to get in a zone and turn a game around single-handedly. Now, Brad Johnson's got a strong arm. He's smart. He's mobile. He has all the tools, but he's a little too inexperienced to get into a zone yet.
3rd down and 7. Johnson dumps it off. Charles Evans lost his footing. Not enough for the first down. So the Cardinals hold the Vikings in the red zone, speaking of zones, and the field goal unit will come on for the 3rd time of this first half.
I think a defense is always going to be good in the red zone if you have a strong front 7. Because what happens when you get into the red zone, you get backed up, and the coverage element of your defense doesn't become as important. And if anything, that's where the Arizona Cardinals defense is weak, in their coverage element outside of Aeneas Williams.
27 yards. field goal attempt is good. Sisson now 2 for 3 as the Vikings have extended their lead to 6-0.
Enjoy the ride by Aptiva, the extraordinary home computer from IBM. By First Brands Corporation, makers of STP Complete Fuel System Cleaner. And by the U.S. Army, be a part of the toughest, smartest Army in the world. Be all you can be.
Vikings! Woo! Well, the Minnesota Vikings on their 15-play drive, and those folks certainly happy about it.
I mean, people wondering about the enthusiasm for the home crowd here for the Vikings. Those people are enthused. I mean, not only did they paint their own faces, they painted the kids' faces.
Leland McElroy out across the 20 to the 22-yard line. Chris Walsh made the stop with the Vikings leading by 6.
An all-pro mascot. I mean, the guy's got the fur going. He's got the long hair and the tattoos. Look at that tattoo there. He's got tattoos all over the place. He's got the tails of all different kinds of animals on his boots. I mean, that is his perfect Viking mascot.
Hope those knives weren't sharp.
Hey, I mean, the swords are even clanking out there. I mean, those are real swords.
Play action on first down, and it's picked off. Second interception. Esiason has thrown this afternoon. Robert Griffin with his 4th of the season. All 4 coming in the last 9 games.
And there's a little pushing match going on between John Randall and Boomer Esiason. Remember, Randall loves to play mind games, not with everybody. I mean, not just offensive linemen, but with the quarterback. The amazing thing about this is not just that Robert Griffin comes up with this beautiful interception. He's got that perfect coverage on Larry Center. But, Kenny, the fact that the guy is even out there on the field. I mean, he separated his shoulder a couple of weeks ago. Now, here, you watch John Randall, and he's talking to Boomer. He is working on Boomer's mind, because he knows that being hot and being in a zone in the NFL isn't just about throwing passes. It's about what's going on between your ears under the helmet.
From the 26, Leroy Horde on first down, a gain of 3 yards. So Boomer Esiason has completed 3 passes to his Cardinal teammates and 2 to the Vikings defenders.
Yeah, he is definitely out of the zone right now. But remember, I mean, Boomer has the capacity when you get like that, and when you're a hot quarterback, you can go cold, but you can get hot again fast. So the Vikings defense is going to have to continue to put the pressure, and John Randall's going to have to continue to get into Boomer's head.
Amp Lee takes the handoff. Remember, much of Boomer's success over these last 3 weeks has come in the 4th quarter.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, he struggled last week early against Philadelphia. And Jim Fossil really wasn't happy with what he's doing. And now you see Fossil, and they're working on this thing right here. Now, what that thing right there is it's called a thermofax. You see these things all the time, and it comes out of a little machine that's back there on the bench. And what it does is it shows 3 different pictures of a particular play. And the offensive coordinator can analyze it with his quarterback and say, see here, this is the thing that you missed. You shouldn't have thrown this ball because of X, Y, and Z.
Johnson on 3rd and 3. Keeps it himself and fools the Cardinals.
Wow. Hey, you want to talk about confidence in your guys up front? That's unbelievable confidence. Because who's right there? I mean, Eric Swan is right there in the center. Here's Swan right here. But look at that surge that David Dixon gets on him, and Randall McDaniel, and the center right in the middle, Jeff Christie. Look at this surge. I mean, that's an amazing thing. Of course, they catch him off guard because they're thinking pass, but still, it's great surge, and it's a nice job by Brad Johnson. You know, that looks like one of those plays he called at the line.
Here's Ford. All 3 linemen you mentioned very familiar to the folks back in Phoenix. Christie, originally drafted by the Cardinals in 1992, spent the year on their practice squad, and McDaniel and Dixon, the 2 guards, both played at Arizona State at Sun Devil Stadium.
Yeah, and you know what? Really, every football game starts right there in the center of the field. And because if McDaniel and Christie and Dixon can get a surge like that and pick up a first down, not only does it give you a first down, it gives you attitude, it gives you confidence, and you go back to the sideline, you go back to the huddle and say, hey, we can move these guys physically out of our way.
2nd down and 9. Johnson was under pressure from the blitzing Seth Joyner, and he threw it away.
And this is something that the Arizona Cardinals have done, and they've been able to do this. They've been able to blitz Seth Joyner because now all of a sudden Joyner believes in Vince Tobin's defensive system, and he's comfortable with it. And they're using Seth Joyner in the capacity that really made him famous with the Philadelphia Eagles, and that is as a linebacker to be a run stuffer, to make the plays on the screen as we saw earlier, and to blitz the quarterback. Seth Joyner is not a cover linebacker, so you always have an advantage sending him through the line of scrimmage on a blitz. But Vince Tobin, as I started to say, he came into this team earlier and his defensive players didn't have total confidence in his system.
Pass on the field. It will be spotted at the out-of-bounds spot. Third down.
The question on the field was the last play a lateral or a pass, and it has been ruled a lateral. So it forces the Vikings back to the 19-yard line.
Yeah, because it was a lateral, and then wherever the ball goes out of bounds is where the Vikings have it.
On second down and 15, it's Amp Lee once again. Lee across the 5 to the end zone, touchdown!
What a well-executed play by the Minnesota Vikings offense, and what a nice call by Dennis Green's offensive coordinator, Brian Billick. And really, Johnson executed it perfectly. They started out, they sent 3 wide receivers to the right, making the defense focus their coverage on the right side of the offense, and then they went back to the left with the screen to Amp Lee.
Nothing Vikings. $19 yards from Brad Johnson to Amp Lee for the touchdown. For Anthony Lee, nicknamed Amp, he carries his football card in order to cash checks at the bank.
Was the football card says Amp on it, or
football
Anthony?
Card says Amp.
So are the checks, do they have checks have Amp on them or Anthony?
Well, I guess he uses the card as a photo ID.
It's the first I've heard of that.
Did not need an identification to enter the end zone for the first touchdown of this game. Leland McElroy out across the 30-yard line, the rookie out of Texas A&M, 27-yard return. And the punter, Mitch Berger, made the stop.
We're back in Minnesota where the Vikings are up on the Cardinals 13-0. Boomer Esiason coming into this game in the zone. He's out of the zone now. If you're in the zone at home, she loves you too. The person you love, or if you're a woman, and then he loves you too. You get a promotion and a raise at work on Monday, and then you're driving home and you're speeding, and the cop that pulls you over turns out to be your best friend's brother. That's when you're in the zone if you're just sitting at home. Boomer today, you see 3 for 8, 27 yards, 2 interceptions. He is not in a zone. I mean, she tells him no. You get fired from your job, and then you get pulled over, and the cop turns out to be John Randall's brother.
Well, Boomer looking to get back in the zone on first down. They keep it on the ground with LaShawn Johnson across the 35. Gain of 7 yards. Martin Harrison on the tackle.
The Cardinals have an interesting situation at running back because what they have is they've got 2 runners. They've got LaShawn Johnson and they've got Leland McElroy, the rookie. And each runner has different running characteristics. LaShawn Johnson is a slasher, a straight-ahead, hit-the-hole runner. And Leland McElroy is a juker, a guy who can get outside, and if you give him a big enough hole, he can make defenders miss. Looks like John Randall might be hurt.
Well, flags were thrown on the play. And Randall is down.
Looks like he might have got something in his eye.
Right side of the offensive line. Still second down.
Right, yeah. I mean, his helmet came off. He probably got gouged in the eye. And when they came off sides, sometimes that'll happen. That's why a lot of guys, you see them using those face shields. The problem with a face shield is, you know, that plastic that they put over your helmet. The problem with that is you get sweaty and it steams up and it reduces your vision. The problem with not having it is you can get one of those big offensive linemen sausage-like fingers through your mask and into your eye.
Similar to the problem you have wearing that protective shield here in the broadcast booth.
Yeah, I got to keep your fingers out of my eye.
Larry centers. Not enough for the first down. Dave Garnett, first Viking in on the stop.
Nice collision, nice effort by Dave Garnett. Now it looks like they're putting some drops in John Randall's eye. And I can't imagine what kind of help a drop is going to give you, putting it in your eye after you get a gouge.
Could they be looking for a contact lens?
Well, they could be looking for a lens. Or the other thing is, if the white of the eye is cut, then what they'll do is they'll put some antibiotic in there to keep it from getting infected.
Third down and 3. 3 wide receivers. Boomer over the middle. Has the first down as the catch is made by Anthony Edwards. Robert Griffith and Jeff Brady on the stop, but the Cardinals, who have punted twice and thrown 2 interceptions among their first 4 possessions, continue the drive.
Well, the other thing that the Minnesota offense has done by having their long sustained drive is they've kept Boomer Esiason off the field for a period of time. And it's always hard when you're sitting over there on the sideline and only coming in for these brief forays.
Long count this time by Esiason. And he finds a receiver. It's Rob Moore, his first catch of the afternoon.
Well, what Boomer Esiason saw was he saw those linebackers starting to creep up towards the line of scrimmage. And when these guys start creeping up and the safeties start creeping up, he knows that a blitz is coming. And when there's a blitz coming, he knows there's an isolation with a cornerback on Rob Moore. And that is a win for the Arizona Cardinals in their mind.
Second down and 5. It is Larry Centers, the Pro Bowler a year ago. Tim, our Aflac trivia question today. Which quarterback in the National Football League led his team to the biggest turnaround from one season to the next in terms of one-loss record in league history? Our Aflac trivia question as we hit the 2-minute warning, with the Minnesota Vikings leading the Arizona Cardinals by the score of 13-0. And we will return to the Metrodome right after these messages. Our Aflac trivia question: which quarterback led his team to the biggest turnaround in league history? And the answer is Boomer Esiason, with the Cincinnati Bengals 4-11 in 1987, named league MVP as the Bengals went to the Super Bowl in '88 with a record of 12-4. And of course, although Boomer was not with the Cardinals last year, they finished 4-12, looking at a possible 10-6 should they win the remainder of their games. Wide open is the tight end, Pat Carter. His first reception all the way down to the Vikings 10, a gain of 34 yards.
Well, it starts with the protection that Boomer gets up front. And you're going to see the Vikings coming clean, and then LaShawn Johnson gets a nice block on Darryl Talley. Allows Boomer to get that ball off to who? Pat Carter, number 80, the tight end. Now, the great thing about Pat Carter catching a ball is people said until this year that Pat Carter couldn't catch balls. Jim Fossil, the offensive coordinator, said, hey, I don't want to know about what's been in the past. Why can't he catch balls? Let's throw it to him, and that's what the Cardinals have been doing.
Now the pitch back to LaShawn Johnson. So the Cardinals, number 80, Pat Carter, with more receptions today than the Vikings, number 80, Chris Carter.
Yeah, and it goes back to Jim Fossil, the offensive coordinator, because he said, hey, let's not have any preconceptions. Let's talk about, let's say, why can't Pat Carter catch a football? And that even goes back to Vince Tobin, who said, hey, why can't the Arizona Cardinals be a winning football team? And that's what he wrote in a team letter to guys this summer.
Second and goal. No flags. The intended receiver was Frank Sanders. Tim, coming up on the Dockers Khakis halftime report, JB and Terry will bring you all the scores and highlights from today's NFL action, plus choice cuts with last week's best plays in the NFL. That's all coming up on the Dockers Khakis halftime.
It's like Rob Selby is the guy who's down for the Arizona Cardinals.
And we'll step out. Back in a moment.
Selby, the left guard for the Arizona Cardinals, is down, and then you see right here the knee, and you can see the hardware there. See the hardware? He's got the brace on that knee already. And what that tells you is it's a knee that he's had problems with in the past, because the only reason you wear hardware is if you've had a prior operation or an injury. Now here's Selby right here. He's trying to keep John Randall out of Boomer Esiason's face. He gets help from centers, but it's his own. Now, actually, it's Hanks. It's Ben Hanks, 51, the blitzing linebacker, who rolls up on Selby's already bad knee.
And the Cardinals already banged up at the left guard position with Duval Love on injured reserve.
Yeah, that's right. And again, the game of football starts in that center with those center guys, so you never want to lose a guy who stepped in and done a pretty nice job of replacing Duval Love, and that's Selby. And right there you see the knee. That's the classic roll-up, and then you say to yourself, well, how come the hardware didn't protect him? And the answer is, look, he's walking off the field right now. So you think, hey, without that hardware, that's a collision that could just take the whole knee out and take the whole thing apart, and you end up on the operating table. But it's good to see Selby walking out on his own under his own power.
Replaced by the former Indianapolis Colt, Joe Stasiak, 7th year out of Ohio State. 3rd and goal for the Cardinals. Under a minute to play, 2nd quarter. Esiason in trouble, taken down by Martin Harrison, his 6th sack of the season.
And he does it on one of the best in the business. Lomas Brown, the left tackle for the Arizona Cardinals. Martin Harrison has multiple moves. We talked to Coach Fazio yesterday, and he said the thing that Harrison's got is he's got an endless amount of moves. He comes over the top, and really it's Sean Randall who forces him right into the hands of his waiting roommate, Martin Harrison.
38-yard field goal attempt. Kevin Butler, the former Bear. And the Cardinals finally on the scoreboard, but it's 3, not 7, thanks to Martin Harrison.
And John Randall. Where the Cards close the gap slightly, 13-3, Minnesota. Now here's a mascot that's not a big-time mascot, but here's a big-time play. Martin Harrison here, John Randall here. Now these two guys are roommates, and they really work together. You see Randall forcing Esiason into Martin's hands, and they're used to working together. These guys hang out together, they go to movies together, and it's been reported that around Minnesota, if you're in a shopping mall, Mall of America or wherever you are, you see Martin Harrison and John Randall, they'll be putting swim moves and spin moves on each other walking through the hallways of the mall. I mean, these guys just can't stop putting pass moves on people, on themselves, shoppers, ladies, baby carriages, you name it, they're going to put a move on it.
Roommates, we should point out, on the road. I'm not sure if Martin's wife would be too thrilled should John Randall move into their house.
I don't think she'd be, because the thing about John Randall is, you know, you love John Randall, but he's a real excitable guy. He never stops going. But the thing about him is he's going to bring his dog Max with him. So, you know, if you get Randall, you got to get Max in the picture as well.
Not room for Max and Martin in the same household.
No, and his wife. No.
And once again, coming up on the Doctors Khakis halftime, JB and Terry with all the scores and highlights from today's NFL action, plus Choice Cuts, which features last week's best plays in the NFL. Well, 4 seconds to go. First half. Johnson will run out the clock as the Vikings will head to the locker room at halftime, leading the Cardinals by the score of 13-3. JB, Terry, Howie, and Ronnie from the Fox Television Center with the Doctors Khakis halftime report following these messages.
Mulder and
to cluster Boomer Esiason very early in this second half, because Boomer has been around long enough and he has enough confidence to where he can put the first half completely out of his mind and turn this thing around.
Esiason to the end on first down, and the pass is complete. He faked the handoff to LaShawn Johnson and then hit Rob Moore, his second reception, and it's good for a gain of 9.
And what the fake handoff does is it draws the safety up, and it does not give Corey Fuller the kind of support he wants in his pass coverage. So he's forced to stay deep. Rob Moore pulls up short, and it's a nice, crisp play and way to start out to get Boomer's rhythm back.
Generous spot by the officials. Moore did pick up 10 for a Cardinals first down. LaShawn Johnson.
It was just bad footwork on that play all around. I mean, Boomer ended up on the ground. Johnson ends up running into his guys. So I really think that the Arizona Cardinals are going to be better served to stay with that passing game. Now watch it here. I mean, Boomer trips on LaShawn, and they trip each other. And, you know, you're almost, when you see that guy, that big guy right there waiting for you, John Randall, you're almost better off getting tripped than going down.
Slow day for LaShawn Johnson, who gained 214 yards in one game against New Orleans earlier this season. This time it's Larry Centers, and he is hit for a loss.
And it's Martin Harrison again. Now, Harrison is a pass rush specialist. He's a long-bodied guy, and we talked about earlier after he got his sack in the first half, which prevented Arizona from getting a touchdown, held them to a field goal. And you see it there. He doesn't have a lot of bulk coming out of those shoulder pads. He's a long-rangey guy, 6'5", 251 pounds, a guy mostly relegated to the pass rush situations. He's in because Derek Alexander, their first-round draft choice of a year ago, has got that bad hip.
Third down and 11. Esiason out of the shotgun. With time, dumps it off to Larry Centers. Not enough for the first down. Jeff Brady, the middle linebacker, made the tackle, gain of 8, but the Cardinals will be forced to punt.
Once again, when you see Boomer Esiason throwing that underneath pass to Larry Centers, when he has that far to go to get a first down, you know that there's outstanding coverage by the Minnesota Vikings cornerbacks on Frank Sanders and Rob Moore.
Amp Lee calls for a fair catch at the 30 flag on the play. 38-yard punt by Fiegels. Third Cardinals penalty of the afternoon. Vikings, Tim, still have not committed a penalty. Only 2 last week, 4 the week before, none here today.
Well, they have no penalties and they have no turnovers. That's how you win football games.
On offense, will penalize 5 yards and re-kick.
I talked about Vince Tobin in the first half, Kenny, about that letter that he wrote to his team, and I really find that interesting. I mean, he said, hey, let's forget about the past history, the recent history of the Arizona Cardinals. Let's ask ourselves, why can't we be one of the better teams in the league?
Over the last 3 weeks, they have been.
Yeah, and the players really have answered that call.
And this one takes a Cardinals bounce inside the 10.
Wow. That's a change of field position at 26 yards. They would have had it on the 30. Now they've got it on the 4.
With the roll, a 68-yard punt, longest of the season for Fiegels.
Tune Substitute by McDonald's, official break of the NFL. By True Value, the official hardware store of the NFL. And by Hertz, for business, for pleasure. Nobody does it exactly like Hertz.
The Minnesota State Capitol in St. Paul. And we are here in Minneapolis, where the Vikings start out deep in their own territory, following the 68-yard punt. And Leroy Hoare gives the Vikings some breathing room out across the 15. Brent Alexander and Eric Hill made the stop after a 13-yard pickup by Hoare.
Kenny, this is running with a sense of urgency. When you run the football like this, you want it bad. I mean, that's what happens when you're a Pro Bowler 2 years ago with a multi-million-dollar contract, cut by 2 different teams this season. Now the Vikings give you a chance, and this is what you do. I mean, Leroy Hoare has answered the call. He could have felt sorry for himself. He could have gone home and pouted and counted his money and said the heck on the whole NFL. Instead, he has performed today like a champion.
Here's Charles Evans And we should point out, Ford released by the Ravens when they signed Van Morris. They wanted to free up salary cap room. He was signed by Carolina, but Anthony Johnson for the injured Tumunga Biakabatuka with 4 consecutive 100-yard games.
And the wonderful thing about Leroy Horde was he told us yesterday, he said, hey, you know, when I was there with the Carolina Panthers, they told me I was there to replace Anthony Johnson, and they were going to cut Anthony Johnson. Anthony Johnson had 3 100-yard games in a row, and they let me go. He said, and even though I didn't want to be let go, I was happy for Anthony Johnson. It takes a big man with a big heart to say that.
And here's Brad Johnson. Can't find anyone. A flag is thrown downfield.
I think they're going to get Aeneas Williams.
Aeneas Williams has shut out Chris Carter to this point.
Holding, 28, defense. First down.
Tommy Bennett, the strong safety.
Tommy Bennett in, of course, for Matt Darby, the strong safety who broke his thumb with a Bennett fracture, of all things, right? I mean, how often do you have that? I mean, Darby breaks his thumb, and the fracture was medically termed a Bennett fracture.
And so here's his replacement, Tommy Bennett.
Exactly, Bennett benefiting from the Bennett.
Quick drop, quick slant. And there's the first reception of the afternoon and the 74th on the season for Chris Carter.
And the only reason Brad Johnson throws this ball to Chris Carter is because there's a tremendous amount of separation between Carter and Aeneas Williams. Look at the distance there in the coverage, and that's the only way Johnson will throw the ball Aeneas Williams' way. How do you know you're a star player in the NFL, a real impact player? You know when the first thing the quarterback looks at is where are you on the field. Brad Johnson looks for Aeneas Williams before he looks at anything else.
Leroy Horde out to the 33-yard line.
Kenny, even though Aeneas Williams did allow that first catch there for Chris Carter, you have to realize that Brad Johnson has only thrown to Chris Carter 2 times today. He's only caught one of them. He broke the other one up by tripping Carter up a little bit for 11 yards, and he only got 4 yards after the catch. So a big day for Aeneas Williams. And sometimes when you have a big day, you know, people don't talk about you. They don't hear about you.
Second down and 8 over the middle. Wide open, the tight end, Hunter Goodwin. His first reception of the season.
I love to see a big body tight end like that go down the middle. The reason Hunter Goodwin is in the lineup for the Minnesota Vikings was to establish the run game. Here he is. He's a big guy, 275 pounds. So when he runs down the middle of the field, the players, the linebackers and the safeties, just innately, they don't respect him as much. They say, hey, this guy's too big to be running down through the middle here and catching a pass. But that's exactly what he does. It's like Pat Carter, the tight end for the Arizona Cardinals.
And he had never caught a pass in the NFL prior to that one. Ford across the 40. And Chris Carter, who we spoke about throughout the first half, who was shut out over the first 30 minutes. Over the last 2 games, Tim, against the Cardinals, Carter with 26 receptions.
Yeah, and that's amazing. But you have to realize in these 2 games with those kind of numbers, Aeneas Williams was assigned to Jake Reed. So the Cardinals, very smart, Vince Tobin, in saying, all right, well, enough of that. Carter is not going to kill us. We're going to put Aeneas Williams on him and shut him down, and that's what's happened so far.
Here's Jake Reed. Oh, here's the end zone. Touchdown, Vikings.
What a nicely thrown pass by Brad Johnson.
Maybe Williams should have been covering Reed on that one.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you talk about it, and Williams had Chris Carter shut down. He's had him closed down this whole game. But this time here, it's Jake Reed, and this is exactly what Dennis Green said had to happen. Now watch Johnson deliver the ball right here between the coverage of the safety and the cornerback. Reed does a nice job with the move, and then here it is. Here's the space that he's got to throw that football in, and he delivers it perfectly.
Sixth touchdown of the season for Jake Reed. And the Vikings have extended their lead to 17 points.
Tonight's story.
The Vikings drive 96 yards on 7 plays, culminating with the 40-yard touchdown pass. I wonder if Johnson dialed 227.
They probably dialed him from up in the box. When you score and throw a touchdown pass the way he threw that pass, you don't have to worry about calling them. They'll call you.
Leland McElroy from the 2-yard line, across the 20, across the 30. Finally tripped up after the 33-yard kickoff return.
Brad Johnson creates an opportunity for his receiver, Jake Reed, by looking off the strong safety. Watch Johnson's head. Watch where his vision goes. And when he holds his head to the left there, it draws the free safety away from Reed. Then he turns, makes the throw, and there's the free safety right there, Brent Alexander, too late to get to Jake Reed.
Now it's Boomer Esiason's turn from his own 35 flags. Remember, the Vikings had not yet been called for a penalty all game.
Ball start, 68.
They still have not.
Offense. Prior to the snap.
As Joe
No
Wolf,
first down.
the Cardinals' right tackle, the guilty party.
And the good thing about having 1st and 15 with the ineffectiveness that the Arizona Cardinals have had in the run game is it forces the Cardinals into more of a known passing situation, as you see a wide receiver come in and replacing Leland McElroy. So now those defensive linemen up front, especially John Randall here, they can just tee off, rush the passer.
Here they come. And Esiason gets it away to the tight end, Pat Carter, for the first down as Esiason was about to get hit by Martin Harrison. He found Carter for the gain of 18.
Well, the Vikings linebackers, their focus is on Larry Centers, covering Larry Centers. And Coach Fazio, the defensive coordinator, told us yesterday he wanted to bracket Larry Centers with 2 linebackers. Well, that only leaves one other linebacker to cover Pat Carter, and Pat Carter is taking advantage of that today with 2 catches.
Sanders in motion. Esiason to the air once again, and it is Larry Centers in Minnesota Vikings territory. Darryl Talley on the stop, gain of 6. Tim Wednesday, the year's hottest acts in pop, rock, rap, and country, appear live on one stage at the 1996 Billboard Music Awards in Las Vegas. Join host Chris Rock Wednesday at 8, 7 Central, that is, Tim. 7 Central
Wait a minute.
On Nonstop Fox.
You mean JB's not going to host that?
JB hosts everything else. Anthony Edwards could not hold on.
Well, that'll take you out of a zone. I mean, everybody does everything right, and the other receivers clear open the zone for Anthony Edwards. He gets himself open. Boomer Esiason has the protection. He delivers the ball, and then you just have a drop. Now you're in a 3rd down situation. Look at this. I mean, look at these guys clearing out defenders for Anthony Edwards. When your teammates clear it out for you, you gotta come through and catch it.
Esiason had been 8 of his previous 9 prior to the drop. 3rd down and 4. Larry Centers nearly made the catch. Would have been a spectacular one-handed grab, but instead the Cardinals will punt.
And that's unbelievable respect by the Vikings defense on Larry Centers. Because, again, they want to bracket this man right here, Centers, and watch how they do it. They do it with a linebacker, and they do it with a safety. They're using 2 men to defend Larry Centers.
Oh, and a fake punt. Does not work. Ronald McKinnon, rookie linebacker, on the fake. Rookie out of Northern Alabama, loses 4 yards.
But it's still a nice effort by Vince Tobin. When you're 6-6 and the playoffs are in your sights and you're trying to turn a game around, why not? Why not do something like this? And it just does not work. I think McKinnon missed the handoff. And he paid for it. Ronald McKinnon fakes the handoff and then tries to take it, but it's the veteran Fernando Smith, the defensive end for the Vikings, who sniffs it out. Now watch, he sees the fake there. Smith says, no, that's no fake. He grabs him. He doesn't get the tackle, but he holds him up enough for the rest of the Vikings to rally and foible that fake punt.
McKinnon faked the handoff to Stevie Anderson. So the Vikings now with some trickery of their own. The flea flicker nearly picked off by Ronnie Bradford.
You talk about having to come up with a catch. We saw Anthony Edwards drop one. Now we're going to see Bradford drop this ball, and it's put perfectly into his hands. I don't think Brad Johnson even sees Ronnie Bradford. That's a ball he needs to catch to turn this whole thing around. There's coverage all over Chris Carter. I mean, 3 guys all over him.
2 consecutive trick plays. Is this the Arena Football League? You do not often,
we'll know if they start bouncing it off the wall.
You do not often see that in the NFL. Flag is thrown on 2nd and 10.
Penalties have certainly helped the Minnesota Vikings nicely in this game, keeping drives alive for them, frustrating drives for the Arizona Cardinals.
That is the 6th Cardinal penalty.
35, defense.
Williams.
Yeah.
First down.
Well, it's a battle. I mean, anytime you've got to go against Chris Carter, and you've got to go against him all day long, there's really no reprieve at all for Aeneas Williams. He has been battling one of the biggest, one of the most physical wide receivers in the league all day long.
The only reprieve is halftime.
Yeah.
Leroy Horde on 1st and 10. Driven back. And right now for a McDonald's game break. Let's go to JB at our Fox Television Center.
Kenny Howard, this is why Ron Wolf liked Desmond Howard. Punt return, guess how long? 75 yards. Howie Long says it looks like he's got energy and stamina to go. Yes, indeed, 14-7 Green Bay over Chicago. Back to Kenny Howard and Tim Green.
What I want to know, Tim, is did Desmond leap up into the stands?
I don't know. They cut it off before that, but I don't know if he's in sync enough to know that. But you got to do that. In Green Bay, you got to leap into the stand.
Play action pass. And it is complete. First down, Chris Carter.
What a beautiful catch by Chris Carter. You know, Carter, I guarantee you, went to the huddle and said to Brad Johnson, all right, now I'm working Aeneas Williams. And Aeneas Williams actually is off of Chris Carter on this play. He's covered by Seth Joyner, and that's an invitation for Brad Johnson to throw that ball to Chris Carter immediately. So you see, again, you see on that play how effective Aeneas Williams has been, because the moment Williams is off of him, they throw to him right away. And now Aeneas is running with him. You see him right there? He's running with Carter. He's back on it.
Johnson to Carter again. Aeneas Williams told us yesterday Chris Carter's hands are like a vacuum.
Yeah, and they were. And you saw it on that, not so much this play, but the play before. I mean, that ball, Brad Johnson just puts that ball up there, you know, right into his hands. It's a perfect analogy. But Aeneas Williams is a smart guy. You know, I mean, he's one of the more cerebral guys in the league. Now, you were telling me yesterday he passed up an academic scholarship to Dartmouth. I mean, that's a smart guy.
Instead attended Southern, where his father had also studied. Here's Leroy Horde. First down, gain of 7. Can we hear that vacuum sound effect again? Could you do that again?
Well, when Chris Carter makes another catch, I'll do it.
I'm really intrigued by the vacuum sound.
Well, I'm intrigued by it, but I'm also intrigued by what Leroy Horde has done with this run game for the Minnesota Vikings, because the Cardinals' defense, when they've given up 100 yards or more on the ground, have been 1-6 so far this season. When they've held teams to under 100 yards, they've been 5-0. Today, the Vikings 112 bodes ill for the Arizona team.
On the trick play, it's Chris Walsh throwing to the end zone. Chris Walsh, the wide receiver, looking for Chris Carter. The third quick play we have seen in the last couple of minutes.
You know what this tells you? This tells you that these coaches are just pulling out all the stops. Now let's watch Chris Carter and what happens with Aeneas Williams. He grabs him by the shirt, throws him down. Aeneas Williams trips. Walsh just can't get that ball quite there to Chris Carter. So this is what happens. Remember a couple plays ago, Aeneas Williams had the holding penalty. That's what will happen when you get two all-pros going against each other. They don't limit themselves to just moves and things like that. No vacuum on that play, by the way. But they use their hands and they play a very physical game.
Now the Vikings keep it on the ground. More conventional play calling with Leroy Horde.
Yeah, and talk about physical. I mean, every time Leroy Horde has run up through that line of scrimmage, you can hear the pads pop all around the stadium. That's what you love. I mean, you love that kind of football in the NFL. Watch him here. He's getting the blocking again. Nice blocking by his tight end and his tackle Stringer pulling up. But then you see it there. Just collision after collision from Leroy Horde.
And it has led to an injured Cardinal. Bernard Wilson still down. Will step out with the Vikings leading 20-3.
In a moment, the sun rises.
Bernard Wilson receiving the brunt of the punishment from running back Leroy Horde. And you see it there. He gets his head snapped a little bit to the side, probably resulting in a stinger. That's usually what happens when you get your head bent like that. And that's not a lot of fun. I mean, a stinger gives you that jolt of electricity all down through your back and your arm. Makes you feel like you're just about to die.
Replaced by Brad Otis. 3rd and 5. Johnson looking end zone. Touchdown, Cardinals, Ismail.
Did somebody say earlier that Brad Johnson didn't have the ability to take a game into his own hands? Kenny, did somebody say that? I don't know. I mean, he may not have had it coming into this game, but he certainly looks like it here. Nice job of scrambling. Kadri Ismail persevering. Whenever the quarterback scrambles, that's what you do. You find the back of the end zone, and you just keep running.
The Cardinals remember Kadri Ismail. He scored the 50-yard game-winning touchdown in overtime last year in Tempe. And here he comes up with his 3rd touchdown catch of the season in his 4th year out of your alma mater, Syracuse University.
Yep, so you know he's a good man. And things just start to get fun. I mean, let's watch Brad Johnson. Watch what he does when he gets the pressure. Because there's coverage, there's nothing, he sees nothing. Now he runs out of the pocket here, and he just finds something. He just makes something happen. And that's a level that Brad Johnson needed to get to, and I think he may have reached it here today. Because, you know, you're up and you're winning, that's all fine. He's had no interceptions today. But when things break down and you're able to scramble and find a receiver in the end zone, you know that you have the capacity to turn a game around. And then your teammates start to feel it. And then the coaches start to feel it. And then the management starts to feel it, and they give you a big paycheck, which is always nice.
Speaking of big paychecks, Brad Johnson will certainly receive some bigger paychecks next year, whether in Minnesota or elsewhere. His first 3-touchdown game of his career.
Yeah, I mean, he'll be getting a big contract after this season. Absolutely no doubt about it, because he has all the tools, and now he's starting to show that he has the intangibles as well.
23 yards on the return by Leland McElroy. A 27-3 lead for the Vikings, as both teams came in 6-6, and once again a look at the NFC playoff picture.
And so anytime you're back in this group here where you need some help, you can certainly help yourself, as the Vikings seem to be doing, by knocking one of the other teams that need some help down into the dumps. And of course, the New York Giants losing to or trailing today anyway, and Chicago behind in Green Bay. So that's all. Those are all good signs for the Vikings.
At least both of these clubs are not off the screen like 4 other NFC teams who are not listed.
Yeah, that's true. They're on the screen. But for Boomer to keep his team back on the screen next week, he's got to perform one of those tremendous comebacks that he really has done. I mean, he has orchestrated big comebacks in the last 3 weeks. This is when Boomer is at his best. Right now, late in the game.
Hurry up offense. And And this is close to a first down to the tight end, third-round draft pick out of USC, Johnny McWilliams, his first catch today.
And what the position that you're put in as a defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings, Coach Fazio there, is you want to play loose, you want to play off your receivers, but you don't want to play too loose. So there's really a fine line there that you've got to coach for. John Randall got it. Randall got it.
It will be Vikings football. Fernando Smith on the recovery as Randall hit Esiason. Turnover number 3 by the Cardinals.
Now Fernando Smith's running into the crowd. He just threw the ball into the crowd. You got to love that. That'll get people going. Here's Randall right here on the outside. They only put one blocker on him. You can't ever do that. You got to have 2 on Randall, because when you don't, this is what happens. The ball goes in the air. Here it is again. He beats the guy clean. It's just a nice sack by Randall, a sack and a forced fumble. An impact player. That's what John Randall is. That's what he'll always be. You know, they gouge him in the eye, they double team him, but as soon as they take the double team off Randall, he's right there forcing a turnover.
Leroy Hoard to the 30. Under 2 minutes to go, third quarter. And it has been a very busy day for John Randall, both on the field and off the field prior to the game.
Yeah, well, he's a vicious, violent player, but then you see him here with his daughter Brittany, and you realize here's a guy who's got a great sense of humor, and he's a wonderful guy. You know, you see him there in the capacity of a father. Here you see him in the capacity of a ferocious defensive tackle. It looks like he does a pretty good job of both.
And pretty much the father of the defensive unit.
Yeah,
here
absolutely.
in Minnesota.
10.5 sacks.
Johnson looking for Jake Reed. Ronnie Bradford, and a flag is thrown, and Bradford cannot believe it.
No, he should believe it, because he was right up Jake Reed's back. It was a nice effort by Bradford, and really something that you got to do. You can't let Jake Reed go ahead and get this score. But you see that hand there? He's all over Jake Reed. And that's something that you're always going to get called for. Now, you can yell and scream, but it really doesn't matter. I mean, everybody in the stadium, including your teammates. See how his teammates aren't even talking to him? Because they know. I mean, if anybody's going to say anything, they're going to say, hey, Ronnie, just be quiet. You pass interfered with him.
7th Cardinal penalty. Leroy Hoard spins his way to the 5-yard line.
I mean, did you see Hoard's legs? They had Hoard up on his back, and his legs were still spinning and turning around like he's like one of those wind-up toys that my kids have at home.
Or like in a cartoon.
Yeah, like
Remember
a
how
cartoon.
the Flintstones used to drive their cars?
Yeah, he looked like he could have been driving a Flintstones car. They went up on his back, and his legs are still just churning. An outstanding day today for Leroy Hoard. 20 rushes, 87 yards, not to mention the yards he's gotten as a receiver.
Second and goal. This is Randall McDaniel, the left guard, lining up as the fullback.
No, Dennis Green and Brian Billick, his offensive coordinator, have really pulled out all the stops, and they're starting to have fun. And that's what you want to do, because Dennis Green is in a precarious situation here. He needs to take this team to the playoffs this season, and he also needs to bring more people into the stands to sell more tickets. So he probably gave the word to Brian Billick, his coordinator, hey, let's start having some fun. Let's pull some things out of our hat that make people talk about the Minnesota Vikings in this area, and not only win games, but fill seats.
Well, what they have pulled out of their hat so far, a 27-3 lead after 3 quarters. We'll be back after these messages. Quarters complete from the Metrodome in Minnesota, where the Vikings lead the Cardinals by the score of 27-3. And we talked about Boomer Esiason in the zone over the last 3 weeks, but today it has been Brad Johnson's turn.
Yeah, the Vikings defense has knocked Boomer out of his zone, and Brad Johnson, his offensive line, has given him the protection to be in it.
And 4 touchdowns on the day. Chris Carter, as the Vikings extend their lead. 4th touchdown pass for Brad Johnson.
Well, it's all working for Dennis Green. His quarterback is working, his wide receiver's working, and there's Chris Carter right there. And once again, when Aeneas Williams is not on Chris Carter, he's going to get the ball because Tommy Bennett cannot cover Chris Carter man for man. Don't forget, the first place Brad Johnson looks when he comes up to the line is where is Aeneas Williams. When he's not there, he throws the touchdown.
Well, Chris Carter, nothing in the first half. 4 receptions with his 7th touchdown of the season here in the second half as Johnson has hit 4 different teammates in the end zone today. Starting with Lee in the first half, Reed, Ismael, and Carter in the second. McElroy up the middle, and it is Chris Walsh on the stop, 24 yards on the return. Well, tonight, Mulder and Scully uncover our nation's most terrifying conspiracy, but exposing the truth could cost them their lives, although Tim Green does not think so.
Nah.
An all-new X-Files tonight at 9, 8 Central.
Nothing can kill Mulder and Scully. I mean, they're awesome. I mean, it's a great show. I mean, if you have not seen it, you really ought to check it out. And if you see it once, I think you'll be hooked, like me.
Esiason driven to the turf once again. Esra Tuaolo, who did not make the start. He has missed the last 3 games due to injury, coming on with his 3rd sack.
Now, nothing's better than this for a defensive lineman. As a former defensive lineman, I know you come off of an injury, and then all of a sudden, there you are right in the midst of the thing, and you blast right up through the middle, and you put the crunch on the quarterback.
Hurry up offense. Esiason in trouble. Larry Centers is pulled down by his sneakers, Jeff Brady. And right now, for a McDonald's game break. Let's return to JB at our Fox Television Center.
Kenny, take a look at Green Bay. Simple little handoff to Dorsey Levens for 10 yards. He had the longest run of the season at 24. Right before that, Green Bay on top by 11. Kenny, Tim.
Thanks, JB. 3rd and 11. Esiason finds Centers again. And he works his way towards the marker.
See, with that kind of lead, with a 31-point lead, that's fine. I mean, Coach Fangio doesn't care about statistics, passing statistics. He cares about wins. So he's going to leave those underneath receivers wide open. He wants to make sure that the coverage is focused on the deep patterns.
Esiason rolling left. And then threw it away once again. It was John Randall.
Yeah, Randall's all over Esiason. We saw him get into his mind earlier, and now he's getting into his body. I mean, you know, because there he is. I mean, Esiason's got to straighten his shirt up. He's getting pummeled around by John Randall. And there's Randall. You see the face guard he's got. Remember what you talked about when you get hit in the eye, you put that face shield on? I mean, that is just one intense man. Look at his stomach going up and down. I mean, he's just breathing hard, working hard. He'll be at Boomer again.
Centers, met by Brady.
And a nice meet, too. I mean, a nice meeting by Brady. He held a nice meeting with him and just stopped him in his tracks. Take a look here at what John Randall's done today. You know, the thing that they do about Randall is they move him all around. Double teamed 8 times, but he's got 9 hurries and 1 sack. That means he's affected the pass of the quarterback 9 times.
Rob Moore in Vikings territory, and I wonder if John Randall will show up at Boomer's doorstep when the Cardinals return to Arizona tonight.
Oh, I imagine he will. I mean, John Randall is the kind of guy that he scouts his opponents, not just by what they do on film, but he likes to know what they like to do and then with their hobbies and stuff. And then he'll get into their head and start talking to them about different things that are important to him.
Frank Sanders bobbled the football, could not hold on.
But he never gets personal. I mean, John Randall will talk, you know, he'll see a guy who collects classic Corvettes or something, and he'll say, hey, you know, I like Corvettes too, just to get the guy thinking. And then when you get him thinking, you put the moves on him, and you get 9 hurries, you get a sack, and you're in the quarterback's face.
This time Sanders makes the catch and is spun to the turf by Robert Griffith after the gain of 11. Cardinals in their hurry-up offense in this 4th quarter.
And I talked about Griffith before, a separated shoulder a couple of weeks ago. Very courageous just to be out here today at all.
Flag on the play. That flag might have been thrown higher in the air than any flag I've ever seen.
It looked like a punt. Looked like Beagle's punt.
Great hang time on the flag.
It looks like it's going to be against Arizona. Everything really has gone against Arizona today.
8 Cardinal penalties. Vikings have not been called for any. As you mentioned earlier, no turnovers, no penalties.
Formation, offense. The tackle lined up on the end of the line. Still first down.
See, it's an illegal formation because when you've got receivers out wide, the tackle can't be the only guy on the line. You got to have one of those wide receivers up on the line of scrimmage. But when you go into the hurry up, this guy's here, that guy's there. They don't know where they're supposed to be, and you get the penalty.
Boomer on 1st and 15. Pump fakes. And Orlando Thomas came together. What a collision with Stevie Anderson. So it will be 2nd down.
And you
at
see
15.
how upset Orlando Thomas is? We talked to Dwayne Washington yesterday, and he said, Orlando Thomas, you can't be anywhere. If you're in the shower, you're at the lunch table, on the bus, the team plane, wherever you are, Orlando Thomas doesn't want to talk about anything but interceptions. He says he dreams about interceptions at night. He talks about interceptions with everybody. He calls home. He talks to his mom about interceptions. Never stops talking about interceptions, and that's why he gets them.
He led the league last year as a rookie with 9. Another first down for the Cardinals. Stevie Anderson coming up with his first reception of the season. 3rd-year man out of Grambling, played with Esiason in New York with the Jets. On the Vikings, 14. Another flag is thrown as Esiason looked to hit Frank Sanders, but a flag on the play.
Well, what happened was Pitt Goff didn't get himself off the field soon enough. And when you start running this hurry-up offense, what you want to do as a defensive coordinator is you want to roll your defensive linemen, because you see these guys with their hands on their hips. Nothing is more draining than rushing the passer play after play after play. It's like a wrestling match.
And that is the first Vikings penalty
Offside.
of the game.
94, defense is declined. 12 more men on the field. Defense will be accepted.
Yeah, he got both penalties.
Replay the first
Big
step.
Goff was not only the 12th man on the field, he's offsides. So they got a 2-for-1 deal. Here he is down here. Now see these guys in here, Foge wants to keep rolling fresh guys in, but see it down there? He doesn't get off the field before Boomer makes that quick snap. You know, Boomer, the way he's operating, even though there's only 11 and a half minutes left in this game, the way he's running this thing, you can tell he still thinks he can get back in it. I mean, he really believes it. I guarantee you, Boomer thinks he's going to get a touchdown here, and then he'll just keep rolling and get back in this football game. That's how well things have been going for the Arizona Cardinals in the last 3 weeks.
Larry centers, cuts inside, and he is in for a touchdown.
What an effort. And, you know, even though it seems like it's a hopeless case, I said Boomer believes, and I guarantee you this man right here, Larry Centers, believes, because he always believes. He's a guy who plays the game with a tremendous amount of joy. So if you're Boomer Esiason and you believe, you're looking for another guy who believes, and Centers, I mean, he gets this ball way back there, 12 yards out. But then he pounds and he churns and he keeps his legs going and he stretches out for the touchdown.
And they believe, thanks to some of the circumstances that have taken place over the last 3 weeks. Kevin Butler, it is now 34-10. Vikings still 11:28 remaining in this 4th quarter from the Metrodome.
Miller Lite presents.
Vikings lead the Cardinals by the score of 34-10. The Cardinals obviously feel this one is far from over as they attempted the onside kick.
Well, they do, and as you said during the break, in the last 3 weeks, the Cardinals have averaged 35 points a game. So Boomer Esiason and Jim Fossil, who you see there, just walking out of the picture, they think that they can still come back in this game.
2 of the last 3, they have scored 3 fourth-quarter touchdowns. Johnson for Carter.
Well, we talked about Boomer Esiason coming into this game and being in his zone, but this guy right here, Brad Johnson, has supplanted Boomer in the zone. Now, if you're in the zone, things happen like, you know, your mother-in-law can't make it to dinner, so you have to just go out with your wife. Your kid wins the championship, whatever championship it is. And maybe you bought IBM at 55, then you're in the zone. And if you're Brad Johnson, you've got these kinds of numbers with 4 touchdowns and giving your team a shot to stay in that playoff hunt.
4 touchdowns in his last 10 pass attempts, as Leroy Horde is also in the zone this afternoon. Now another 6-yard gain, 93 yards for Leroy Horde.
I think you're right. I mean, Leroy Horde really is in the zone. He's running out of his shoes. This is the second time he's run out of his shoe today. 21 rushes, 93 yards, and we're going to have to add another number there. Two times ran out of his shoe. And that's working hard.
Horde picked up the first down. Scotty Graham, around left tackle, up to the 26-yard line. And for the Minnesota Vikings, over the last 3 weeks, only 1 game here at home. That will be in 2 weeks against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. All divisional games upcoming for Minnesota.
Right, and these are all games that the Minnesota Vikings really believe that they can win. And of course, Detroit and Tampa Bay, you look at their records and you say, well, that's very realistic. But then you have to realize Green Bay, even though they're going to Green Bay, that interdivisional rivalry is a game where anyone can win.
The Vikings have already defeated the Packers this season. Johnson goes far side. Jake Reed makes the catch, stayed in bounds. And then he was forced out by Ronnie Bradford, a gain of 10 yards.
And Brian Billick's taking no chances. I mean, the offensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings is saying, hey, look, I got a quarterback in the zone. Even though the Cardinals are 24 points down, I'm not going to take any chances. I'm just going to keep doing what's working. And really, everything's working. Horde running, Jake Reed getting himself open, making the catches, and Brad Johnson really putting himself at that next level of quarterback play.
Scotty Graham up the middle.
A lot of people believe that in order for Dennis Green to keep his job here in Minnesota, he has to win all of his games in December, go 10-6, and get into the playoffs. And a lot of people believe if that does not happen, that Dennis Green will be looking for a job elsewhere in the National Football League. And of course, everyone's been talking about Lou Holtz, and we know that there are some members of the ownership here in Minnesota that would like to have Lou Holtz coach. And I'm sure there are others who'd like to have Dennis Green coach.
Chris Carter could not hang on, nearly made a spectacular catch in the end zone.
Yeah, the problem there is Aeneas Williams is the guy with the coverage. Now remember before, Tommy Bennett was on the coverage?
35, defense.
He hit him for the penalty.
Well, there was a flag.
And it looks like Aeneas is hurt, too. And here they are. They've been having this battle all game long. Now, where's that? You tell me where that pass interference was. No, go ahead, tell me. Did you see pass interference on that?
If I knew, I'd tell you.
Okay. It's a bad call. It's a bad call. I mean, these guys have been battling all day. You got to let them battle. There they go. They'll go at it again.
Randall McDaniel lined up as the fullback, and he is, let's see, did he make it?
No, I don't
Looks to be
think he
stopped
made it.
short.
He's trying to cheat himself over the line, which you got to love if you're an offensive lineman. Anytime you get that ball, you're going to do whatever you can.
Memories of William the Refrigerator Perry during the Super Bowl year.
Minus about 100 pounds. Here he is right here, right up the gut. You don't think these guys here are blocking hard for Randall McDaniel? They're doing everything they can to get their buddy across the goal line with the ball in his hand. Oh, you know what he's saying? He's saying, give me that thing again, man. I want that thing again.
And he is lined up in the backfield once again.
They got to give it to him.
This crowd will erupt should he score. Play action.
I think they got to go back to McDaniel. I mean, he's charged up.
And McDaniel against his home state squad, a native of Avondale, Arizona, played at Agua Fria High School and then Arizona State.
Yeah. Let's see if he lobbies for that ball.
The crowd chanting, Randall, Randall. Leroy Horde to the outside. Touchdown!
I guess that's the reason why you have McDaniel do the blocking. He springs Leroy Horde with a great open field block. One hand just slams Tommy Bennett right down to the turf.
Leroy Horde keeping the football. First touchdown as a Viking.
Watch McDaniel's block, Kenny. Look at this. He gets one hand. Look at that right there. Whoa! Bennett goes right on his back, and that gives Leroy Horde the corner. So, you know, you like to see the big guy go in for the score. But, as we said, Brian Billick's not going to take any chances with Boomer Esiason over there on the other sideline.
This is the most points scored by the Vikings this season, also the most allowed by the Cardinals.
How does it feel to drive a 1997 Seville STS? That's how it feels to drive the 300 horsepower Seville STS with the North Star system.
I thought you might be hungry. Happy holidays.
Thanks, Dave. Happy holidays to you, too.
If you're working hard this holiday, you deserve a big, hearty meal, like Wendy's Smoky Bacon Cheeseburger Combo.
Thanks, Dave.
3 strips of hickory smoked bacon, smoked cheddar on a quarter-pound of fresh beef with sautéed onions, made right when you order it, plus biggie fries and a drink. Come in for a Wendy's Smoky Bacon Cheeseburger Combo today.
Happy holidays, Dave.
What a nice way to say happy holidays.
If you want more computer for your money, you got to call us, the friendly folks at Gateway 2000.
Want me back up? Pick up the phone and give us a call.
Call now. Call now. Call now.
Kind of nervous.
Call now.
Grab the phone. Give us a call. Pick up. Dial, dial, dial.
Dial.
Right now. Gateway computers feature the Intel Pentium processor. So call 1-800-GATEWAY and ask for our free video. Call us today.
Tonight, Homer's leading Marge. How will the kids take it? Find out on a brand new Simpsons tonight.
Leroy Horde with that last touchdown, and a man who really has played all day with a sense of urgency. 22 rushes for 94 yards, and now a touchdown.
And the Vikings, over their last 6 possessions, have scored 5 touchdowns. The other possession, the first half ended. In fact, on their last 8 possessions, 5 touchdowns, 2 field goals. And the end of the half, they have only punted once, have not turned the ball over, and have committed 0, or make that 1 penalty. 1 penalty today. 17 yards on the return.
Will she say, I love it? You shouldn't have. It's just what I wanted. Or will she say, nothing at all? The diamond solitaire necklace, this Christmas, goes straight for the heart.
On first down, Esiason's pass is complete, and that is reception number 10 on the afternoon for Larry Centers. 13 yards and a Cardinals first down.
And now what they want to do is anytime the ball goes on the ground, whether it's a reception or not, the Vikings defenders will be holding guys, trying to pin them down, hold them down, and just work that clock out.
Esiason faked the handoff, and it's Centers again. Flag is thrown. Esiason may have taken a late hit from Jason Fisk.
Well, anytime you're in a hurry-up offense like that, the defensive lineman's mentality is, let me bolster my statistics with some sacks.
Well, it is not Fisk. It looks to be
Martin Harrison.
on the Cardinals.
Oh, it's on the Cardinals. Maybe a holding penalty. But Boomer certainly did take a shot on that last play.
offense. Still first down.
It's Mike Devlin, the old Buffalo Bills center. And he's the guy working on Jason Fisk. Wow. That's one of those shots where if Fisk was a Detroit Lion, they'd be asking for his ejection, and they'd be wanting to find people.
The John Teerling syndrome. Stevie Anderson stays in bounds. 6.5 to go. 15-yard gain. Coming up on the NASDAQ postgame report, the Fox Television Center in Hollywood will get you up to date on all the scores from around the National Football League. That's all coming up on the NASDAQ postgame report. Larry Centers takes the handoff for the first down and more, as the Cardinals have certainly not given up despite trailing by 31 points.
Yeah, but you know what? We talked about centers earlier, and some guys just never give up. I mean, Carter never gives up for the Vikings. Centers never gives up for the Cardinals.
Nor does Boomer Esiason.
Nope.
Pass is complete on the far side. It's Stevie Anderson once again. Coverage on the play by Alfred Jackson.
But they kept him in bounds. Now, that was something last week that the Philadelphia Eagles defensive secondary was not able to do to the Arizona Cardinals offense. With 45 seconds left, Boomer came back from behind and threw a touchdown pass to win that game. Of course, very different circumstances here today.
Esiason looking for Anderson once again. 3 Vikings in the vicinity. Esiason had completed his previous 5 passes.
Yeah, and there you look at Rob Moore, and he has not had the kind of production that you would expect him to have today. And that speaks directly to the coverage by the Minnesota Vikings secondary, most specifically Dwayne Washington. He was the guy who knew he was going to have more most of the day. And Alfred Jackson is the guy who's got something going on there with his hand. Take a look, see what happens to him. He gets the hand up there. Oh, man. Robert Griffith smacks that hand. He hits it like a sledgehammer on an anvil and just smashes that thing right there between Griffith and Anderson.
Alfred Jackson in his 6th year out of San Diego State.
You know, I've talked about Griffith, and I keep talking about that separated shoulder that he's got. And you see him throwing his body around out there like he doesn't care. The good news for Griffith, I mean, the bad news was he separated his shoulder. Now, get this. The good news was it was really hard to get it back into the socket. So that was good because it meant the ligaments were still tight. I mean, that hurts just saying it. But he's out there running around, throwing his body around in a football game 3 weeks later. That's toughness.
Flags on the play as Esiason is nearly picked off for Orlando Thomas. He talks about interceptions, but he could not come up with that one.
Look how sick he is. He looks like he's about to be ill. That kills Orlando Thomas. That to Orlando Thomas is worse than eating a bad tamale. I mean, missing an interception just makes him physically ill. And here's the ball right in his hand. Look at that. I mean, that's all he thinks about. That's all he talks about. And he misses it. Oh, man.
Now, what's worse, dropping the interception, or had Thomas picked it off, it would have been called back due to a penalty?
Yeah, that would have been bad, too, but it still makes him sick either way because he didn't know about the penalty.
Esiason took a hit as he looked for Larry Centers.
You know, it's funny, Dwayne Washington told us that when Orlando's not talking about interceptions, he's telling everybody different things to do to get interceptions. He says, hey, tells everybody, keep the wide receivers inside so he has a better chance at safety to pick it off. And if there's ever a slant pattern, just pass it off to me because I got a good chance for an interception. And he says, by the way, guys, when you come in for tackles, make sure you stay high because I got a hurt ankle, and if I hurt my ankle again, I won't get any more interceptions. And the last thing is, P.S., if you get an interception, pitch it to me because I can score a touchdown.
And that one is kicked by Harlan Barnett. And remember last week, both Harlan Barnett and Orlando Thomas involved in that John Elway fourth quarter comeback, the touchdown to Ed McCaffrey, as Barnett and Thomas both tipped the ball at the goal line before McCaffrey came up with the game-winning touchdown.
That's right, and it was at this same goal line right down here. So these guys know that whenever that ball goes bouncing up around in the air, anybody can come down with it. It was certainly a disheartening loss for the Minnesota Vikings last week when they really had Denver, who a team with the best record in the National Football League, and they really had them beat.
This is 4th down, and Boomer gets the first down. Anthony Edwards makes the catch with 5:02 to play. The big story for the Vikings, Brad Johnson, 4 touchdown passes, and Leroy Horde approaching the 100-yard mark as the Vikings lead 41-10. Esiason with the sidearm throw. Edwards is forced out at the 1 by Orlando Thomas.
I've got to tell you, if the Minnesota Vikings can continue to play the way they played today, and there's no reason to think that they can't, Dennis Green could lead this team to a 10-6 record and take them to the playoffs once again, because there's no reason. They've established the run game with Horde, and they've established Johnson as a quarterback.
Vikings call timeout with 4:43 remaining.
Tender grilled chicken, fresh lettuce and tomato, a bakery soft roll. McDonald's new grilled chicken.
Football League, this is the kind of stuff you got to deal with. Hey, Mom, I just got my hand smashed by a couple guys out there, and now it's packed in ice, wrapped up with tape, and you still got a smile on your face. I mean, Alfred Jackson's still smiling. That's how good a painkiller winning is.
Jeff Jones is not smiling.
Yeah, well, that's how much of a funk you get in when you lose in the National Football League. But if you're winning, I mean, you know, you get your hand smashed, you pack it nice, tape it up, and you're laughing, you're smiling, just like Brad Johnson. That's what it's all about. I mean, that's the great feeling. Right now, late in the game, you've got the thing under control. It's just a wonderful feeling for everybody. Problem is, it only lasts until Monday morning.
Cardinals on the 1-yard line. Flag on the play as Larry Centers took the handoff. Running behind the fullback, Cedric Smith. Oh, only the second Viking penalty.
Offside. Defense. Line up in the neutral zone.
So once again, it will be 1st and goal for the Cardinals, who have averaged 29 points per game in their 6 wins, only 9 in their 6 losses. 10 points today, and they do not add to the total on that play as Cedric Smith is met by Richard Brown, the 8th-year man from San Diego State.
And that's just a nice football play. You know, you're down there on the goal line, and the temptation may be to say, yeah, it doesn't really matter that much. But Brown's playing this game the way Centers is playing it, and the way Leroy Horde's playing it, like, hey, I'm just out here playing football. So when that pass is there, he makes the tackle and saves the touchdown.
Larry Centers pulls his way in for the touchdown. His second of the season, rushing-wise, and his second touchdown of this 4th quarter.
Well, that time Brown tried to take on Larry Centers, and he got a face full of it. Almost knocked his helmet off. So it's a little different trying to make a tackle on a runner like Centers when he's coming at you full force than it is a receiver who's catching that ball and moving horizontally.
Kevin Butler out for the extra point attempt. Jeff Fiegel's holding. So the Cardinals offense moving the ball well in this 4th quarter in the hurry-up offense, although doing it against a defense playing with a 30-somewhat point lead. And right now the Vikings lead is 41-17 with 4:05 to play. Dennis Green squad about to go 7-6 on the season. Next Sunday, our Fox doubleheader beginning at 1 Eastern with the Rams against the Bears. Also the Redskins taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then at 4 Eastern, the Cowboys and these Arizona Cardinals, as well as the San Francisco 49ers and the Carolina Panthers. So check local listings, and we will see Jay Walker make his NFL regular season debut this possession for the Vikings, as Brad Johnson will call it a day. Jay Walker with his helmet on, ready to go. Second year out of Howard University in Washington, D.C. But first, an onside kick attempt by the Cardinals.
Well, I think despite the fact that the Cardinals are going to drop to 6 and 7, head coach Vince Tobin has done something. He's changed the attitude of these Cardinals players around, and I would expect them to give the Dallas Cowboys a good fight next week, if not win it. I mean, they're to that point mentally where they believe they can win.
Andrew Jordan, the tight end, corrals the onside kick, so it will be Jay Walker leading the Vikings out. And Tim, I lived in Washington, D.C. during Walker's collegiate career at Howard, and this guy was college football in the D.C. area. The NCAA Division I AA Player of the Year. He spent the '94 season with the New England Patriots, never got into a game, played for Barcelona in the World League a year ago. Native of Los Angeles, played baseball in the California Angels system, and this is regular season debut. Vikings, of course, do not want to risk Warren Moon's ankles. So in garbage time in the fourth quarter, leading 41-17, it is Walker handing off to Scotty Graham on first down. Coming up next, it is Fox's coverage of Skate International of Germany. Alexei Urmanov leads the men's standings, while Irina Slutskia is the women's leader. That's coming up next, following football.
I didn't know you spoke German.
Well, you know, so many of those names similar to the hockey players. So
that's right.
They kind of roll off the tongue.
Of course, you do Fox NHL hockey. And then before that, though, you got to do the NASDAQ stock market report, the post-game report to find out what's been going on around the league. Scores from around the NFL. JP, Terry, the blonde bomber, will be there bringing us information from around the league.
The blonde bomber.
That's what he said. I was watching the pregame show, and I think it was JB that called him the blonde bomber. He said, I like that.
Not much blonde left.
Oh, he's not going to like that when that gets back to him.
Do you think he's still paying attention? 41-17?
I don't know. He might be. When he knows you're pulling out statistics about Jay Walker from his days in Howard. You know, you never know what's going to happen when you're broadcasting a game. You start downloading information like you're pulling it out of a computer, which I guess you are.
And another timeout called by the Cardinals as they stop the clock with 3:41 to go.
Well, Kenny, we talked about Dennis Green and his luck in December, or his efficiency in December. Third best in the National Football League over the last 4 years, second only to the Chargers and the 49ers with an 11-6 record. Now goes to 12-6 after this win today. And as we've talked about before, I mean, very realistic for the Minnesota Vikings to beat Detroit in Detroit and then come back home and beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then the whole thing, the whole ball may come down to their last game at Green Bay on December 22nd. And as I said before, if Dennis Green's team can do what they did today, and Johnson can throw 4 touchdowns and no interceptions, and Leroy Hort can run, and the offensive line can block the way they did, they're going to be in the playoffs.
Walker's first pass attempt, and it's always nice to have Jake Reed waiting. Reed down to the 22, a gain of 19 yards.
I think the interesting thing about Jay Walker and Brad Johnson is that the Vikings as an organization have used the World League to get these guys experience. So you say, well, you know, the World League, it's over there. It's a lot of guys, and they're almost NFL players, but they're not quite. But it's incredibly valuable as a quarterback, as Brad Johnson will tell you, to go over there, get 10 games under your belt with blitzes coming at you and coverages shifting and changing. So it's good for your mind more than anything.
They played against each other in 1995. Walker with Barcelona and Brad Johnson in London. And we are told, Tim, by our producer Keith Pelly, a World League guru, that Johnson was the second leading passer in the World League in 95, and Jay Walker was third.
Yeah, Pelly's the guy over there in Europe. I mean, when you go over to London, which I did last season in the off season, to cover games for the World League, Pelly's over there, and he knows how to get around. He gets around London and Barcelona. And he was speaking a little Spanish, taking us out to dinner. Good man to have on your side.
And of course, other good men to have on our side. Director Peter Bleckner, as the catch is made by Condre Ismael. Our statisticians, Barry Hockhauser, Eric Merlis, Jeff Morin, Dave Clancy, and Brent Wallace, as we hit the 2-minute warning here in Minnesota. It's the Vikings 41, the Cardinals 17. 28-17, so these are the standings in the NFC Central. And of course, Tim, you can change Minnesota's 6 to a 7 in the victory column, just 2 minutes away. As the Vikings, who started the season 4-0, will now be 3-6 in their last 9, with the Lions next week at the Pontiac Silverdome. Scotty Graham. And for the Arizona Cardinals, tough final 3 weeks, as they will drop to 6-7 with home games against Dallas and Washington. And then they will conclude the season in Philadelphia.
Well, as you see these records and the schedules that teams have, again, Vince Tobin is a guy who's changed an attitude of the Arizona Cardinals. Whatever their record is this season, you can tell by talking to these players that they believe that Vince Tobin is the guy who can turn this team around, who can change an attitude, and ask, why not? Why can't the Arizona Cardinals be a good football team? And I think they will be.
And over the last 3 weeks, they defeated divisional opponents Washington, the Giants, and Philadelphia. Next week, Dallas Cowboys move into town as they will try and continue their excellent play against division rivals.
I think the most interesting thing in Arizona this week will be what they're going to do with Boomer Esiason and Kent Graham. Because, of course, you keep going with Boomer when he was on that 3-game streak, and we talked about how he was in the zone, 8 touchdowns, over 1,100 yards in passing in those 3 wins. But now Kent Graham is getting healthy again, and he performed very well.
And Kent Graham says he's about 80% health-wise following the sprained knee. The final half minute from the Metrodome. Graham 3-3 as a starter. And of course, here in Minnesota, how about Warren Moon's health?
Well, that's right. And if Warren Moon comes back healthy, Dennis Green said, hey, I want to have Warren Moon in there. But Brad Johnson has been absolutely outstanding today.
Tough to replace a guy who threw 4 touchdown passes.
That's right. And the one criticism, or the one thing Dennis Green felt Brad Johnson needed, was the ability to take a game into his own hands. And Brad Johnson really did that today with 4 touchdown passes, although he had tremendous help with a great running game from Leroy Horde and that offensive line up front.
So the Vikings raised their record to 7-6, 41-17 over the Cardinals. John Randall, a big reason why. Mean Joe Green on the left, assistant coach with the Cardinals, shaking hands with Dennis Green, no relation, of course. Mean Joe Green, a 10-time Pro Bowler.
Well, Kenny, the Miller Lite play of the game is this touchdown pass to Jake Reed. And of course, you see Reed beating his man, and then don't forget, Brad Johnson looks off the safety, Brent Alexander, finds that small window, places the ball perfectly. So a nice play of the game by Jake Reed and Brad Johnson.
Brad Johnson completed 12 of his last 14 passes. In all, 19 for 26, 4 touchdowns. And Leroy Horde with 94 yards on 22 carries. And for the Minnesota Vikings, they will travel to Detroit next week, host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 2 weeks from today, and then visit the Green Bay Packers. 7-6, so the playoffs certainly not out of the question.
No, absolutely not. And people are going to be talking about these Minnesota Vikings as a real contender because of the emergence of Brad Johnson and the outstanding running today by Leroy Horde.
So the Vikings win it 41-17 for Tim Green, Kenny Albertson.